Hi, this is Matt Kendall on a ruined it already. On a sunny Monday morning. You can tell it's Monday morning. It's nearly Christmas in 2019. I'm here with Nikki today. Just whereabouts in the world are you today, Nikki?
I'm in Salisbury in Wiltshire.
Oh, Wiltshire, very nice.
It is.
It is the week before Christmas. I love the way it is. Nikki came to do my IEMT course. I'm just thinking what the dates are now. 19. It was about a month, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, wasn't it? Something
Yeah,
like that.
just short of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Nikki actually heard of me and IEMT, I believe, because of a webinar which I did with a woman called Gemma Bailey, where I did a presentation about IEMT. So before we get into that, did you have any prior experience in NLP or therapy or change work or anything like that before you learned about IEMT?
Yes, I did. So I'm a full-time therapist. I use NLP, hypnotherapy and life coaching. I've also got a diploma in CBT, so I tend to use whatever tools that I think will help my clients move on as fast as possible. But I've only been doing that since 2016. Well, 2017 I set up my own business. So quite short-lived as far as therapy work is concerned. But yeah, absolutely fascinated and love what I do.
Okay, can I ask you what you were doing prior to 2017 and what caused you to get into doing therapy?
So through all my adult life, I've been an administrator of some description. The last 16 years prior to me becoming a therapist was with the NHS, in procurement mainly and child health.
Right.
But what changed for me is in 2009, so 10 years ago, almost to the date, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. I became so ill that I wasn't able to look after my 4 children, considered bringing social services. I lost my job with the NHS, which is quite a feat in itself because they don't let go of you very easily.
Yeah.
And they did their utmost to support me and to redeploy me, but it just didn't work. So I ended up losing my job. And I found something called the lightning process, which is based on NLP. And it teaches you how to self-coach yourself back to health by creating neuro pathways which serve you rather than ones that don't. So in short, that's what that is. I had 4 children, 2 of them were really small at the time, so I decided to pause my ambition to become a therapist until they were a little bit older. And in 2016, I started retraining.
Wow. So quite the journey.
Quite the journey.
So you were saying you did, like, you've done NLP and different kind of stuff as well. Did you know much about IEMT or EMDR or kind of the eye movement work before you came onto the webinar?
Not a huge amount, because I knew about representational systems because that's kind of like standard teaching, but not how effective and how fast the change would be until I did the webinar.
So you did the webinar, and what did you sort of learn on the webinar? What did you enjoy about it?
So I learned enough about the background to kind of cement for me that this was absolutely the thing that I wanted to learn out of all the other ones. And the reason that is because, one, the way that you explained things was really, really clear and concise and really valuable. And also the little demonstration you did at the end just blew my mind because it was just a dot moving across the screen. Now, if that can help you change the way you feel about a negative memory, then I thought, what can you do in person with somebody?
And you're saying, so like the webinar kind of cemented in the fact that you wanted to learn this. What was it about that? What was it you were seeking that you wanted to learn, that you wanted to offer your clients?
So with NLP, there's not a huge amount about talking about the past and with hypnotherapy, but there is an element of that. And I have had some clients, I do tend to draw clients or attract clients who have more complex issues. And there have been occasions where I've sat and thought, actually talking about whatever's happened to you is not useful in any way, shape or form. You just need a mechanism or a tool that will allow you to move on. And this really, really fits the bill. It's that added tool that I can use with clients where you recognize really quickly that they don't need to talk about what's happened to them anymore. They just need help moving on. And it's perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So we did that, I think it was a couple of months ago now. You come to London during the weekend. So basically, I'll just sort of let you go on this. What did you think about the 2-day training?
The two-day training was absolutely brilliant in respects of the content that was provided beforehand, so that we could read, understand what we were going to learn beforehand, and you encouraged us to do that so that we could be more present during the training. And it was a big enough group so that you could work with different people with different thoughts, issues, personalities, a whole host of things. And there was lots and lots of practice where we could really get to use in a safe environment, with support if anything should go awry. Not that anything you'd expect anything to go awry. That we had enough support to be able to go, oh, what do we do with this? And you were there on hand to be able to do that. And there were other therapists in the room as well. So it was really, really interesting and very valuable to see what their thoughts and feelings on the processes were.
Absolutely. No, it's I tried to make it as practical and as well paced as possible. So I've been on some therapy trainings where it's just like boring. To be honest, just boring. And I've been on some trainings when I often think it's more for the benefit of the trainer than it is of the people attending.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And they just love themselves. So I like myself, don't get me wrong, but I'm much more about the way
I'm pleased to hear that.
Yeah, well, you know, the way that I designed my training is in like what would be what I would like as in a training, essentially. So I take all the feedback. So I've been doing this obviously for a number of years, but I take all the feedback from people, and then I sort of arrange the content in a way and sort of like paste it in a certain way. So it's like, so the first hour of the weekend, it's really kind of going over what we call the patterns of chronicity. So what this work is based upon, why people stay stuck. Then after then, so that takes us to about lunch on, you know, the Saturday. After then, this is a technique. I'm going to show it to you. You do it. And then we build it up from there. And essentially, IEMT is a suite of about 6-7 different tools, these sorts of kind of combined together. And obviously we have lots of different therapists from different disciplines, and it's great because they all get to use this one singular tool and approach, but it can be used in such a wide variety of contexts, from hypnotherapists to counselors to trauma recovery specialists. We had a teacher on the weekend as well, and he was looking forward to seeing if he can bring it into more, you know, into education. So how did you find actually having the IEMT applied to you over the weekend, and what did you sort of witness and experience applying IEMT to other people over the 2 days?
I think for me, because I've been on such a journey myself, I kind of felt that I was fairly okay. Not a lot of issues to sort out or resolve, but even having the mechanism of being able to just the minor negative memories, that irritating thing that happened yesterday, being able to just like let go of that really quickly. I think the most interesting thing for me, and I was kind of aware of it anyway, was on day 2 when we looked at identities. That was probably the missing jigsaw piece for me as well, that kind of brought everything up to where it should be. Not getting too technical, but operating from a place where you are using all your skills of your current age is really valuable, because if you're reverting back to a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old or whatever age and behaving that way, doesn't usually work out particularly well. No. So being able to resolve that little bit that was still probably hanging around from my younger years was priceless. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and it's excuse me. Essentially, IEMT is broken up into 2 major chunks. The first day is all to do with emotional encoding. And that's basically, how did you learn how to feel this way? And that's where we take somebody's, say they're going to go for a job interview and they feel nervous, they feel they're going to be exposed, whatever it might be. We then work on the actual feeling, to go back to the imprint, to work on the imprint of how you want to feel this way. So when you think about the thing now, it's okay, basically. You can think about what you can do as opposed to reacting emotionally. The second day is ways of behavior. So our behavioral imprints of how we learn to be a certain way. And again, we look at the first time you learned how to, now this doesn't necessarily have to be traumatic for the, you know, for it to actually work. It's just the stuff that's happened, you know, that's all. But why are you acting in a certain way? So we're creating a behavior change. And then on top of that, we do this thing called psychological state accessing cues, where we change the actual physicality of things as well. And so with IEMT, so basically say you have a problem in the middle, you actually come at it from multiple different angles. So, you know, you go for the emotion and the memory, you go for the identity. If it's PTSD, it's allowed you to come out, to put it in your past. It's allowed you to look forward to see what you want to go and achieve. And then it actually changes the physicality of how you actually access negative states as well. So it actually comes at it from quite a few different angles. Now, like I said, you didn't have much to work on yourself. You know, you got some benefit, which was great, but other people obviously had much more stuff than others. And during the weekend, now it's okay to talk about this because he has sent me an email and he has actually supplied, excuse me, a quote and stuff to actually use. But I won't mention by name. But we did have a teacher on the course who had, had been through he went through a very negative incident at school. And it went back to, actually related back to earlier times, which we won't obviously discuss, but it related back to earlier trauma in his life as well. And he was still basically currently suffering with PTSD on the course. From your aspect of you watching it, because I did a lot of demos with this guy, because it worked out really well that when you have somebody who I would actually work with as a client, but actually on stage right in front of the group, it's like light camera, and actually in front of like, I think it was 12 people. What was it like watching somebody sort of change, and what was your experience of watching that?
Well, it was pretty transformational, and I was really pleased that he was on that course as well, because we could really see the benefits of going through, as you say, the sections of IEMT, which is broken down into step by step, and being able to actually see somebody go through such transformational change was remarkable. He went from being really quite anxious, quite worried, and very limiting in his life about what he was able to do. It was getting in the way of him working, and the way he was responding to situations. His whole life was being adversely affected by being stuck. So to see him change from and be able to put the incidents of what happened where it needed to be, which was in the past, and then be able to go back to his very resilient, from how he described himself before the incident happened. He was very capable. He was very able and able to deal with situations, scenarios, very confidently. And to see him sort of like through the 2 days go from somebody that was on high alert to somebody that's like, actually, I can do this. I'm back to the person I used to be, and that is so liberating. I think it's one of the words he used, wasn't it? It was liberating.
Yeah. And I didn't set this up, but during the weekend, he had basically potentially a mugging scenario. Yeah, so he was not from London, and he's a big guy as well. He's like 6'4" or something. He's a really big guy. And he was out in London walking around by himself, and it was getting like, into the evening. And he was using his phone, walking around London. Now, if you're from London or any major city, you know that this is kind of like a no-no to just go out using your phone looking lost, trying to find out where you are. Go inside and do it. So he got to a situation where he was surrounded by 4 guys. Like, I think 2 were on bikes and stuff is usually how it works. Now, he said that, this happened on the Saturday night, and we did a lot of the work on the Saturday with him. So literally a few hours after we did this work in the actual session, in the training, he was confronted by essentially, not his worst fear, but it could have been a very re-traumatizing issue for him.
Yeah.
So he had 4 guys surround him. Now, he said that before we did the work, his legs would have turned to jelly. It would have been a bad situation. What he did was calmly put his phone away, zipped up his jacket, walked through the guy, said, "All right, gentlemen," or "Evening, gentlemen," and just walked through it very calmly, very confidently, and walked away from it, which we couldn't have had better timing with that. No. You know what I mean? We couldn't have had better time. And the way that he talked about it the next day, he spoke about it quite jovially. He was quite, this is what happened, coming to London, this happened. And the actual change he got was, was quite remarkable. And again, literally in a very short space of time. So for those who are watching, this is it's a 2-day process. Now, IEMT works brilliantly with PTSD related stuff, anxiety stuff, emotional stuff. But what I'm interested to hear is, as a therapist, how you started to incorporate this into your own practice, your own clients, what it's been like to use, and what are kind of the results that you've been able to achieve from it as well.
I think you can get really, really fast changing results, as you've described with the guy that was on our course. For people who are stuck ruminating over past negative events, and that keeps affecting them emotionally, it's absolutely brilliant for using on those situations. And because there's no content required, quite often as a therapist where you have to ask what the problem is and they have to give an answer and give content, there's shame or guilt attached to that.
And embarrassment,
and that gets in the way of helping them move on. So to be able to completely delete that part of it and just say, give me a label for it, it dispenses with all of that. So then you can spend your time working on resolving that negative emotion or memory so that they can move on. And it's quite remarkable that with no content, just by moving eyes, you can reprogram your brain to no longer be affected emotionally by that negative memory. And I've used it a number of times within my sessions. And some of the sessions, somebody's arrived who I've worked with, and I thought, actually, this is more useful for you than what I was planning to do. So I've gone straight into using IEMT and gained some really great results. It was, I think, three weeks ago that I did the training, and 3 or 4 weeks ago. So to be able to incorporate that so quickly in my work and recognize when it's a useful tool to use has been brilliant.
Yeah. And so, because when the thing is, what I definitely found that when I go on a training, I'm often sort of quite lost afterwards in terms of how do I use this in reality? So what I've tried to do is I've tried to make it as straightforward as possible. I create flowcharts.
Yeah.
I've created a Facebook group. I'm always around. I'm always reading emails. I'm always trying to give as much, because my aim is to make people like you use IEMT actually and get it used. You know, so it doesn't. This relationship does not end when you leave the session. I'm always around. You know what I mean? I'm always there to try and help. I'm always around to try and help people to actually become practitioners. So I love hearing stories, you know, like yours about people, you know, who you've helped really. Because I don't do much one-on-one anymore. So I'm focusing all of my time on the trainings. This is why I do these kind of interviews. I had a point then. What was it?
How easy has it been for me to use it and incorporate it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. How did you find taking these skills that you get a lot of practice over the weekend, but then taking it into your real world practice? How did you find that sort of, not transition, because you're not going from one to another, but how did you find, because the thing is, I do have a point here. With hypnosis and stuff, I often find it's not the skill, it's the personality that drives the change within people sometimes. I believe IEMT is not like that. I believe it's like a tool. And the tool can be operated by anybody. It's like a spanner. A spanner, it doesn't matter the personality of the person using the spanner. It's a rudimentary tool. So how did you find using the tools with people, and how easy was it to get it working?
It was very easy, because one of the first practice sessions that I did was with a client who I'd been seeing before. And all I needed to do is pick up the notes that you'd given me, go straight to the flowchart to make sure that I stayed on track and I didn't get lost with being new to using the tool. It's very easy in the initial early days to get caught up in wondering what you should be doing because you don't know it verbatim just yet. So I was able to literally just pick up the notes, go to the flowcharts and go, okay, what am I dealing with here? Is it a negative memory? Is it emotion? What do I do next? And it's just that reminder, oh, I need to do this or I need to do that to keep you on track, especially in the early days. I think without that straightforward step by step, I probably wouldn't have been able to use it on that being caught out, not expecting and not preparing. I probably wouldn't have felt confident and therefore wouldn't have run with it. But because I knew that was there, and it was literally picking up a piece of paper, explain to the client, this is a new tool that I've learned. I'm just going to keep these notes to one side, to make sure I stay on track, meant I could do that. And I think as a result of being able to then take her on that journey, within 2 sessions, I think she's probably resolved a lot of things that maybe it would have taken me a bit longer using NLP. And NLP, from my perspective, is incredibly quick as it is. I think IEMT, as you say, it's a Swiss Army knife. Brilliant tool for resolving a lot of issues.
And that's it. It's a tool. It's not a philosophy, essentially. It's a tool to... And how have you found using the patterns? So we call these patterns of chronicity. And it's identifying how people are operating within the world and why they are staying stuck in life. And have you noticed these patterns cropping up in people when you've been working with them?
Yes, yeah. So a lady I worked with last week, again, she's quite complex in a lot of areas. And out of session 1, what did come up was one of her patterns, which I don't think I would have identified without having the patterns of chronicity so very much set out the way that you have done in the training material. It took me a while, but because I'm quite used to this, but I actually spotted it. I thought, that's why she's still stuck. Now I know we can deal with it.
Yeah. And that's it, because people are really good at being them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They're really good at being them. And so IEMT, what's interesting, so people have how they're going to behave. And now the IEMT therapist is we're going to do it my way. We're going to do it this way. So regardless of what the client is sort of displaying, it doesn't change what you're going to do. You're going to react to it, but you're not going to respond. I don't know what the best way to sort of deal with that is, express that is, but essentially, IEMT is not allowing the client to lead the session.
And sometimes they're very good at doing that.
Absolutely. Especially if they want to talk about their experience. And especially if you get to things which are perceived as difficult for them, the therapist will move away from that particular, we'll save that for another time kind of thing. With IEMT, we're literally looking for what's painful, because that's where we're going to create the relief. IEMT doesn't work on bland or nice things. It works on negative. It's like pulling out splinters. It only works on pain, essentially. Yeah. It only works on pain. What's it done for your confidence as a therapist? There's a lot of people who I've sort of spoken to afterwards. They've said it's really helped their confidence, because they now have these tools which they know a very high percentage of the time will work. Because sometimes, obviously, every therapy and every tool is limited, but they know using IEMT is going to, not all of the people all the time, but most of the people most of the time, is going to create a result, a very tangible result. And also what they found as well is their reputations have strengthened very, very quickly. Because if somebody goes for counselling, psychotherapy, or whatever it might be, like, how are you? I'm fine. I started counselling. How long ago? 2 months ago. Cool. You see them a month later. How are you? Oh, I'm okay. You keep seeing them. They're okay. You see somebody 1 week. How are you? My life's awful. I'm seeing somebody tomorrow. You see them next week. What's happened here? You look different. You look physically different. What's happened? Oh, I've had IEMT. And this is where I found a lot of people have got a lot of referrals from, because people change physically as much as behavior and emotionally, literally within overnight almost can be. So how have you found your confidence as a therapist, and have you found people have been sort of referring you or speaking more about you as a result?
I think for my confidence, it's definitely the missing toolkit for my toolbox that I didn't feel that I had before, which is the ability to deal with clients who really don't need to talk about whatever it is that's happened. They just need to move on.
Yeah.
Even though I tend to favour NLP, which is really fast change work anyway, usually elicit change within 2 to 4 sessions anyway, and quite most of my clients come from referral already. So what I can see this doing is just really cementing what I already do, but also giving me that extra where clients are used to leading it, where they will use vocabulary to keep doing what they've always been doing, although they don't realize they're doing it.
Yep.
So being great at being them. It's a great pattern interruption for those people that are so entrenched because they've been to counsellors or psychotherapists or any of them or talking therapies, that's what they're accustomed to doing. And you can elicit great change just by pattern breaking what it is that they're just so unintentionally, habitually doing. Yeah. I go, actually, no, I don't need to know anymore. Just give me a label. And I go, oh, Oh, okay, because they're so used to pouring out their hearts, and that's not useful. You know
No.
what's happened to you. You don't need to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
You've done that enough, and in fact, by doing that, you're just strengthening the neuro pathways to that negative emotion or memory. It's brilliant to be able to go, and actually, no, this is where it stops. We're doing it differently. We're doing this way, because if you want to move on, you need to sort this out once and for all. And I think for vast majority of people, 2 sessions will do what it is that they want to change. And I think that's different to, I think even EMDR is 8 sessions, isn't it?
I believe so. Because we actually had some EMDR people on the weekend,
yes,
didn't we? And they were saying how different it was. So obviously, there's a lot of similarities because you're using the eyes, but EMDR. In fact, the guy who I did a lot of the work on, in the front of the room, said that some of his sessions were an hour and a half of watching a light bar going back and forth, and he went off into like transcendental sort of journeys and off into space and stuff. So EMDR, I believe, it's a different protocol, but you're kind of from my understanding, this is just my understanding of reading multiple books on it, you're working more with belief systems and trying to install and integrate new beliefs.
Yes.
IEMT doesn't do that. IEMT works on what's negative. You remove what's negative, and then at the end, you can move people forward, actually physically move people forward in a sort of a timeline sort of thing. And also, you bring their identities into alignment of who they are now, instead of responding from a childish or an immature perspective.
I think that's the aspect that most excites me, because that you can do that in timeline therapy, absolutely. But from what I've seen and what I've used IEMT so far, it's the method that IEMT brings is much more congruent and much more long-lasting and direct to the point, and it sticks.
Yeah. So let me ask you, we're going to start wrapping this up now. Going forward, because you watched this on a webinar, and you put your faith into me and into this therapy, which you didn't know much about. You came along from Wiltshire, wasn't it? So you came down to London for a couple of days to do this. How do you class your return on investment in both your time and financially for doing this? And what do you have to say to people who are either hypnotherapists, NLPers, or those who want to get into therapy? Because you've only had a 2-year or so journey yourself getting into therapy. So there will be people watching this thinking, is this for me to come and learn this? So again, what's your sort of view on your return on investment in time and money? And also, what do you have to say to people who are watching this, who are curious about actually doing the course?
So I think return on investment will be probably the fastest return on investment that I've ever had for anything that I've learnt. And it's very cost effective. It's very effective. And it's a model that's just different. It's not out there in any other way. Even NLP tends to be 2 to 4 sessions, whereas in the IEMT you can make significant changes. And I think one of the exciting things is its use around PTSD as well. If people are interested in it, I was interested in EFT, I was interested in EMDR. I do absolutely love NLP. Nobody's going to shift me from that one. But IEMT was definitely the right choice for me, and I encourage anyone. It's one weekend, it's a few £100, and it's a tool that is life-changing, not only from your own perspective for the work that you get to do on other therapists and have done on yourself. It's life-changing for those people that you can facilitate change with. It's a really effective, fast tool for change work, especially around anxiety, depression, and single event PTSD. Absolutely brilliant.
Cool. If people want to know more about you or see what you're up to, where are you located on the web? How can people reach you?
So you can search for my name, Nikki, Nikki Emerton, Emerton, and I come up pretty much everywhere. My company is BU, which is www.beu.org.uk. I can be found on Facebook under the same name, LinkedIn, Instagram, usual platforms, Twitter. So yeah, that's me.
Cool. Thank you very much. It's been great speaking to you. In fact, just one last thing, actually. you said that you had a history working with the NHS.
Mm-hmm.
What I would love to see in the future, because we've now just had CPD status approved.
Yep.
So we can now apply or appeal more to nurses, doctors, things like this. I don't know if you can quite answer this actually, but how would you see more of these types of therapies, like IEMT, going into like the NHS, where it can be used in a much more broader and wider sense, just from your perspective from working with the NHS?
Yeah, I think you have a model that could absolutely be recommended, and the reason that is because whenever you're dealing with the NHS, there were the World Health Organization, or NICE guidelines. That's what I'm looking for, is NICE guidelines. I don't know too much about it, but what I do know is that you need to be able to have data, have research.
Yes.
And where a lot of therapies can't provide that, scientific studies, is because each hypnotherapist is going to be slightly different in the way that they apply the tools and the techniques that they have. Each NLP practitioner is going to be different. Whereas with IEMT, because there is set processes which are set in stone, you don't deviate from it. If it's this, you use that. If it's that, you use that. Because it's measurable, I think you stand a really good chance to be able to take it further as a recommended intervention.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I'm hoping for. You know, with the IEMT Association, we're doing a lot of work now. We've got like different guilds being set up, and one of them is for research into it. I've actually got a Doctor of Neuroscience attending again next year, who's already attended last year, who was fascinated by it. And so, yeah, that's where we would really like to take it, to make this more mainstream, as it were, just more usable, just because it's so easy to learn and it's so quick to use. And I just think that, you know, if more nurses, doctors, GPs, but even psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, if they could start to incorporate just parts of this into what they're already doing, I think they'll be able to create some amazing changes for everybody.
It would be fascinating, especially if you can move into different areas of chronic illnesses.
Yes.
Which are on the rise. I think that would be absolutely fascinating. And I think after this interview, I'd like to have a chat with you about that, because I've got some ideas.
Excellent. That does also, because I don't teach the advanced course. I could, but I don't. For a few reasons. I think there's enough in the practitioner to last many years of practice. I am starting next year. I am going to be doing a one-off masterclass day, which is going to be advanced skills for the practitioner. And so we are going to go deeper into the identity and deeper into how to work with more complicated cases and how you overlap the skills to create different kind of changes. And that's going to be just a day of skills, basically. In the actual advanced practitioner, they do go more into medical issues. There was actually a peer-reviewed journal. We had a paper published. His name escapes me at the moment. A practitioner down in Brighton who worked with psoriasis, and there's actually photos, documents of how it went from to how it went to, and it's just incredible. I don't know how they do that, but when you start to take on illnesses and ailments as identities, you can start to work with the actual illness as an identity. And so I think, because they do it for pain, they do it for illnesses, they do it for different kind of conditions, which I don't really have much experience in at all, but I do think there's a large scope for doing this, especially when people talk about their illness. If you listen to the language that they use, it's very very kind of fascinating.
They do talk about it as an identity. And my experience with chronic illnesses, especially autoimmune, is that there is a time and a place where you learn to be this way. At some point, your body learned to attack itself. So find out whether that's a memory, an emotion, or identity. When do you remember being this way? I think there's definitely opportunity for chronic conditions.
Absolutely. It's been fascinating. Thank you so much for spending your Monday morning with us. I will see you in the future. I'll see you in the Facebook groups as well.
You will.
And I just want to say a massive thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Matt. It's been a pleasure.